If you're someone who's been applying for numerous jobs on LinkedIn, trackjobs.com or nhsjobs.com and you feel like it's going nowhere, then this is the video for you. Hi, my name is Monisha. I am currently finishing off my core training, that's residency in the specialty psychiatry, in the coming weeks here in London. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you the timeline of applying for these jobs, what happened within these job interviews, and how on earth did I end up landing 6 out of 6 jobs that I applied for. I'm finally sharing with you these 10 golden tips which have helped me throughout the years of landing jobs here in the NHS, and I hope it helps you as well. Whether you're applying for jobs within NHS or outside of NHS, whether you're a pre-med student, you're a law student, or you are just in general applying for a design job or whatever your job role is, these interview tips will definitely help you. Again, I've got timestamps right down in the description box, so feel free to forward, rewind, or skip the portions that you don't want to watch. Okay, without wasting any more time, let's get into the video. First off, why am I applying for these jobs right now? The way training works in the UK is that we have 3 years of core training and then you would need to apply for your higher training, and there's only 2 times of the year when they accept trainees, or basically there's a trainee intake, and that happens in August and in February. The fact that I'm finishing my training in May is a bit of an odd time, so I would technically be jobless from May to August. Having said that, I was anyway not keen on jumping right into higher training. I think training in itself is quite consuming, and having gone through training during COVID hasn't been the easiest, so I needed a bit of a break, a bit of a timeout. That's the reason why I'm currently applying for non-training or middle grade jobs. These are basically registrar level jobs that I've been applying for. The other reason is that I'm looking for more experience as a middle grade doctor before I take up reg training, because I would come out of reg training becoming a consultant, and I'm in no rush to become a consultant. I want to pick up jobs that I haven't done within my core training, because you only rotate through 6 different specialities. I got to rotate through 6.5. Basically, I did 3 extra months because I missed 3 months during COVID. I did do a 7th rotation as well, which was very short, but there are so many other subspecialties within psychiatry you do not rotate through within these 3 years. So many other subspecialties that I want to kind of venture out into and try, as these middle grade job roles, and then maybe once I feel like, oh, I've got enough experience under my belt and now I'm ready to apply for reg training, I would apply then. And where did I apply for? I applied for jobs on trackjobs.com and nhsjobs.com. Back in the day, which was almost 4.5 years back, when I was applying for my first job, when I hadn't started my first job in the NHS and I was applying from India, most of the jobs were advertised on nhsjobs.com and very few were on trackjobs.com. But over the years, looks like the system has moved to trackjobs.com quite a lot. A lot of the jobs that are on nhsjobs.com are already on trackjobs, so you can actually just move to trackjobs.com. A lot of the jobs which are on trackjobs aren't on nhsjobs.com, so I would make sure that you definitely go through trackjobs because it has majority of the job vacancies and you should definitely apply for jobs over there. These are the 2 websites which I looked up on. As many as adverts that were open for middle grade jobs within psychiatry are the jobs that I applied for. So there are lots of websites. If you're looking for jobs in Scotland, then you can apply on this website. Ireland has its own website. The reason I did not apply on other 2 websites is because I was strictly looking for jobs within England and specifically within London. Alright, so moving on to timeline. In terms of my timeline, I started applying for jobs from mid-December to end of December, which was basically roughly 2.5 weeks. While I'm filming this video, it's end of April. I applied for as many jobs as I could find. The reason I only targeted these 2 weeks is to give you a bit of context. I was at that time sitting and preparing for my 𝐕𝐴𝐺𝐶 exams, which were in January. I didn't want to focus on applying for jobs and sitting these interviews. I didn't want to go through that while I was already preparing for a really important exam. So I told myself I'm going to give 2 weeks to myself and apply for as many as possible, just so that I get the process started. And if I don't get any jobs by the time I finish CASC, it's fine because I still have time from Jan till May to look for a job. My idea was just to test the waters, because I hadn't applied for a job in almost 4 years, because the first time I was applying for a job was when I was outside the country starting my first job in the NHS. So going back to that and redoing my entire CV on the website, I just told myself I don't want to waste so much time, so that's the only reason I targeted those 2 weeks. And then I told myself I would start applying again once my 𝐕𝐴𝐺𝐶 exams are done in January. So from Feb onwards, the plan was to then go full-fledged. So now moving on to what jobs did I apply for. The majority of the jobs that I applied for were all community-based. These jobs were within 3 trusts. The 6 jobs involved in were SLAM, which is South London and Maudsley. Then there was East London and there's Southwest London as well. So my filter was very, very strict. I did not want to look for for jobs outside of London. I wanted to stay within London. Reason being, I feel I'm ready to leave London as of now. Maybe in the future when we, think of moving out and buying a place and everything, we'll definitely be moving out of London. So my criteria was only jobs that are in London, that are middle grade psychiatry, are the ones I'm going to be applying for. Also, whatever was open in those 2 weeks when I was applying for it in December. The other criteria that I looked into was I was not looking for an inpatient job. So that narrowed down my search even more. As a middle grade doctor, I wanted a bit of a break from the whole inpatient setting. So as you can tell, I was very specific in the jobs I was looking for in December. So there were only 6 jobs at that point which were advertised, which were within London, which were psychiatry, and which were middle grade jobs. Alright, so moving on. What happens within these interviews? Honestly, a lot of these questions are pretty much repetitive. Not the case scenarios, but overall questions. I'll probably be making another video to tell you all the common questions that get asked in a NHS jobs interview, and this is basically an overall general video on interview tips, so I will not be touching on that. But to give you an outline as to what happens within the interview is that on the day of the interview, it could be either in person or online. But since COVID, majority of the interviews have been happening online. On the day of the interview, you would have a panel. Sometimes it's just the consultant and you, sometimes it would be the consultant and the nurse lead, and sometimes if there are multiple consultants within the team, so there could be more than one consultant present as well. Sometimes there could be a specialty doctor registrar who's already in the job, also could be present in the interview. One of the interviews, I had 3 consultants sitting and a psychologist from the team as well. So it varies. It's never a definite number of how many people would be sitting across on the panel. First, you would have a round of introductions. Then you would, talk about your portfolio and your CV. Then moving on, you would have a few case scenarios. They would ask you that if so-and-so was happening, how would you address it? What would you do? What would be your diagnosis? What would be your management? There could be multiple case scenarios. Some interviews I had like 3 case scenarios. Some of them I only had 1 case scenario. So it's variable. Then you would have a few ethical dilemma questions as well. And then towards the end, if there are any burning questions from their end or from your end, or if they want to clarify something, or if you want to clarify something, and then, cross your fingers and toes and you hope for them to give you a call or send you an email or contact you in the next few days saying that you've been offered the job. So that's what happens within an interview. So talking about what are the specific questions that get asked, there will be a part 2 to this video. If you are keen on it, I'm happy to make it. I haven't planned it yet, but if you do want me to make a part 2 of the video where what are the questions that they ask, drop it down in the comment section below. Okay, so moving on, what was the outcome of these interviews that I sat for? I was shocked, and I still am. I got offered all 6 jobs. This happened in January while I was still preparing for my CASC exams. Although I applied for these jobs in December, all those interviews were spread out, and I was giving these interviews in January while I was preparing for CASC. I think it was a very stressful period. At that time, I regretted applying for jobs in December because I was so stressed for my CASC exam, but I also had to devote my time to be preparing for these interviews and, to wait in anticipation what the outcome of these interviews would be. In hindsight, I think that was the perfect timing to be applying for these interviews. I think I was very much prepared then and focused then than I would have been if I was applying post-CASC, because I think my mindset was pretty much chill post-CASC because my exam was done and I also already had a job offer which I had accepted. I mean, it worked out well because I got offered all the jobs, but that's not what I thought would be the outcome. Having, applied for 83 jobs in 2019 and being only offered 3 interviews back in the day, to apply for 6 jobs and get offered all 6 jobs in 2 weeks, I'm not bragging about it, but it goes on to show that the preparation now is so different to the preparation I had back in the day, to my experience now is so different to the experience I had back in the day. And I want to preface this by saying that I think it worked in my favor that I was studying for my CASC exams, because CASC is an 𝐈𝐦𝐻𝐸 based exam. I will tell you how I specifically, prepared for each interview. Okay, so now moving on to all the interview tips. These are the 10 tips that I have personally written down from my own experience, and these are the 10 tips that have always worked in my favor, and I also talk about it to my colleagues and my juniors. I think these 10 tips, if you follow them thoroughly, these will at least increase your odds of getting a job offer. So tip number 1 is prepare for it like you would prepare for a written exam. Do not walk into an interview unprepared. Don't just go on the day and think that you're going to wing it or you're so confident. You might have the best communication skills, you might be the most confident person in the room, but you still need to prepare for the interview. The way I prepared for the interview was every job advert has a job description. In that job description, they would write like what would be your job responsibilities, what do they expect from you, what are your person specifications, and they would also write what sort of common cases that they see, what does their caseload look like, what does their routine look like within a week. So that gives you an idea as to what sort of job would that be if you were to accept the job. Say for example, if it was eating disorder jobs, so kind of have these case scenarios in your head already, knowing that look at the advert, you would already know what would the most common cases that would come into your clinic, or what would be the most common cases that you would see if you were taking up an inpatient setting, whether it's a CAMS job, an old age job, if you're looking into a surgical branch or a medicine branch, you would kind of know what are the most common cases that would come in. So the thing that I would do, write them down, also have bullet points of what the management plan would be for these common cases. If you're somebody who's not from medical background, you know, whether you're a designer or you're a law student, you're an engineer, you would still know what would be the most common issues that could come up within your job, and that's what they want to see, you know, your problem solving skills. If you're not a STEM student or a medicine student, you can still have takeaway points. You can always think in your head what would be the most problematic issues that can come up within this job, and that's definitely what they're going to be asking you, whether it's clinical scenarios or it's ethical scenarios or it's day-to-day problems within the job. Right. The point number 2 is do not sell yourself short. When you read the advert, there would be person specifications. Read that thoroughly, write them down, and come up with reasons, back those points with scenarios. Why are you the most perfect person for the job? Because at some point in the interview, they're definitely going to ask you, why do you think you deserve this job, or why do you think you're the ideal or the right candidate for this job? Whether it's at the beginning of the interview or towards the end of the interview, and you better have a prize-worthy answer for that. So you cannot on the day be winging it. What I would do is I would write down these points, that why do I think I'm the most perfect candidate for the job. You need to sell yourself, because they wouldn't be able to tell what your positives are. Why would you be the perfect fit for the job? So make sure that you have these points written down. The third point is practice. Practice, 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 and I cannot stress this enough. Even if it's a job interview, you definitely have to practice. What worked in my favor is that I was already preparing for CAST with my study partner. Gino, who's my study partner for all my exams, was super helpful. He practiced with me and had these mock interviews with me at least a day before my interview. Even if, you know, it's not weeks, at least days leading up to the interview, you should definitely be practicing. And by practicing, I don't mean just in front of the mirror. Find a colleague, find another person or anyone else who's going to interview you and ask them for feedback. Don't be egoistic about it. We are all here to learn. Ask them to point out things like if you're umming a lot, or, you know, if you have certain mannerisms, if you're not making eye contact, if you're not coming across as confident, or if you're missing out some important key points in the management plan. It's always good to have an extra pair of eyes and another set of brains to be helping you out prepare for this interview. Please do not walk into an interview without having a few mock interviews with your friend or your colleague or whoever it is. Tip number 4 is honesty is the best policy. Do not lie in an interview. Do not lie on your CV, because they will be expecting you to submit evidence supporting it. Within an interview, please do not lie about anything, whether it's your clinical skills. If you do not know something, own up to it and say that, oh, I'm not sure about this answer, but if I were to guess something, then this is what I would say. If I were to come up with an answer, this is what I would say, but I'm not 100% sure about it. They are looking for people who are able to recognize their weaknesses alongside their strengths. Please do not lie within an interview. If you cannot answer something, just say you're not sure about it, but you're willing to learn. One of the questions that I got asked in one of my interviews was, what was the biggest challenge that you faced within your training? How did you tackle it? And what does it go on to show about your character? Make sure, you know, alongside your strengths, you're also very much aware of your weaknesses or very much aware of your limitations. Tip number 5 is confidence is the key. Make sure that you come across as a confident person. Having said that, don't come across as arrogant. They obviously want to see that if this person is confident enough to take up more responsibilities, if they're confident enough to face challenges within the team that might arise. So make sure that you're having this interview which is much more conversational, and that sort of shows your confidence as well. A bit of banter is nice, you know, if you want to crack a joke, if you want to point out something funny, do that. So be yourself, bring out your best personality. I know it's a lot of pressure on the day, but it's going to go by so quickly and you're going to look back and think of the things you didn't say or you could have said. So that's why I always say have a list of bullet points right next to you on the day, especially when it's an online interview. It's so much helpful to just have points written down. The moment you might not be able to come up, so make sure you have a set of points. And when you have, you know, a bit of things written written down. That also adds to your confidence on the day. So tip number 6 is be ready to think on your feet on the day. They might ask you questions on the day which you do not have answers to, and that is very much fine. They also themselves know that some of the questions they might ask you might be difficult. So don't just sit there in silence. Don't just say that, oh, I don't know. Make sure that, you know, if you're thinking about it, tell them that I'm not too sure about the answer, but if I were to think about it, you know, and start thinking out loud, start verbalizing what you're thinking. Don't just think in your head, because obviously they don't know what you're thinking. You need to start verbalizing it. Once you start verbalizing it, if they can see that, you know, you are able to think a bit laterally, you're able to come to an answer, and this is your thinking that's taken you to come to an answer, that sometimes is all that they're looking for as well. Make sure that you're thinking out loud, because they're just looking for what's the reasoning that's gone behind you coming up to this answer. Tip number 7 is no experience is too small. Every single experience, whether it's pre-med school, during your med school, post-med school, every single thing counts. Even if you've done community placement, if you're back from India where I am, and you did, you know, campaigns and awareness campaigns, whether it's for malaria or tuberculosis, all of those things count. So do not ignore any of your experiences, whether you were part of university society groups or where you contributed in any way to making a change, whether you organized dance competitions, whatever little experience you have, every single thing counts. And it might look very little and small to you, but honestly, it plays a big role in showing different sides to your personality. And they're looking for people who go beyond their academics, and there's more to their personality than just their 9 to 5. So tip number 8 is it's okay to be nervous. Everybody gets nervous, everybody gets cold feet, and so do I as well. It is an artificial scenario and they are very well aware of it. Key thing to remember is that you're not alone. Everyone's nervous. Everyone who's sitting the interview is nervous, and the panel is aware of it as well. Tip number 9 is do not compare yourself or your journey with anyone else. I have been on the other side of the fence where I was applying for my first job in the NHS. I've been in the NHS as a non-trainee and have applied for a training job to get it within London. Also applied for middle grade jobs now, which are only within London. So I've been in every phase of this journey, and there's so much more remaining to my journey. And I can tell you one thing is that do not compare yourself pre-interview, during interview, or post-interview. The only thing that's within your control and that you can do is to show from within your CV why you are the most perfect candidate. Show them that you fit every person specification that they have put in the job advert, that you tick all the tick boxes, and that's all that's in your control. So do not compare yourself to someone else, to how their interview went or what happens. All that you can do is show yourself in positive light. So please don't compare yourself. So the last and the final and the most important tip is get a good night's rest. The day of the interview is important, but the night before the interview is important as well. Make sure you get good night's rest on the day. Make sure that you've had something to eat so that your gut is full, because it'll help you think from your gut. It's a bad joke, but you know what I mean. So make sure, you know, you've got a good night's rest. You've got, you know, enough intake in terms of your diet. You've eaten well. Keep yourself hydrated. And these are the things that are 100% in your control. And rest everything, you just leave it up to the universe and what happens on the day of the interview. These are the 10 tips that have always helped me to make sure that I smash out my interviews, and I hope these 10 interview tips help you as well. If there's anything else that you do other than these 10 things, then please do feel free to comment down below. Well, this is the end of the video, but I have another video wherein I have talked in depth about writing your CV so that it helps you land enough job interviews in the first place. That video is on Skillshare. I've got a link down below. If you click on it, you get 1 month's free subscription of Skillshare, and that also helps you watch the videos, so you can always unsubscribe once you watch the video. But it helps you understand how to write your CV on these websites better, so that you can highlight and sell yourself in the best possible way to then be offered these job interviews in the first place. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, then please do make sure to like, share, and subscribe, all the good stuff, and that helps to push the algorithm of the video as well and the channel as well. Well, this is the end of it, and I hope you're looking after yourself and your loved ones. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.